Hey, I'm Bob and I like to make stuff. Today I'm gonna get started on the lathe by making a simple tool handle. I want to set this up just a little bit. I just purchased a brand new lathe. I have not used it yet. In fact, I've only ever turned one thing on the lathe. I made this handle for this ice pick that I made a long time ago on a really old lathe that honestly just kind of scared me. I decided to get rid of that one, buy a brand new one that's a little bit smaller, and the first thing I'm going to do is make a handle for this file. This is just a round file with the tang on it. It has no handle, so we're just going to make a handle to put this in. And to make that handle, we're going to use this piece of maple. It's not quite square, it's about 1 inch in both directions, and so we're going to put this on and try to turn the handle to go on here. The reason I'm setting this up for you is because I have no idea what I'm doing. This is the first time I've used this machine. It's only the second time I've ever turned anything, so I am learning on the job here. But I just want to motivate you to try something new for the first time yourself. So I'm just going to take you along with me as I figure this out. This is my new lathe. This was recommended by a friend of mine who's a turner, and since I purchased it, I've talked to several other people and they have the same one and they really like it, so I'm kind of glad that I got it. Part of the reason I got this one is because it will go at a very slow speed, so it's safer for kids to use. This will give me a chance to get my kids working on this machine and we can make something on here together. If you're interested in this lathe or the tools that I'm using, I'll have them linked down in the description. You can go check those out. I also don't know anything about lathe tools, but I bought this set of 3 because they were a good price and seem to have good reviews. In this set came a detailer, a rougher, which is kind of squared off corners, and then a finish one, which is round. I don't know that I need all 3 of these for this project, but I'll probably use them just to try them out. I've only done a little bit of research on making handles, and usually you have to have a metal ring to go over the top of it so that it won't split when you put the tool in. So I'm going to use this piece of copper pipe to cut a section off of, really just because it's the only pipe I have that's the right size. Most people use brass, and that would definitely look better, but I think this will work for the first go at it. Then we have to put the wood in the lathe, and to do that we need to find the center point on each end. I'm going to use a ruler to draw a line from corner to corner, and where those 2 lines intersect, that's the center point. We're going to use those center points to mount it in the lathe to try to keep it as balanced as possible. It's set up in the lathe and ready to go, I think. So I'm going to start with the rougher, and this will help me get rid of the hard edges and get it down to a cylinder, and then we can work from there. Don't forget safety glasses. To test this out, I was really careful not to push the blade in too far, but instead make really shallow passes, going back and forth, trying to get a straight cut. I didn't really have any idea how much it was cutting, so I had to stop it on occasion and see how much was being knocked off. As I got more comfortable, I made deeper cuts on each pass. After a few minutes, it was pretty close to round. That was super easy and only took a couple of minutes. So now I want to give it a little bit of a contour, and I don't know if this is right or not, but I'm going to use the smoother to get kind of a curve. I don't think the square edges are going to give me that. So I'm going to try it with this and just add a little bit of shape to it. It's already pretty small and I don't want to go too much smaller. So I'm going to add some shape and then a little bit of detail just for practice. And to measure the inside of this pipe, I'm going to use some digital calipers. You just set them to 0, stick them in, and then spread them out, and then that tells you your size. I'm going to lock it down at this size so it won't move. Now I just have to make sure that my handle end fits in this area. And making this happen, for me at least, was really about patience. I tried really hard to make very shallow cuts, and then test, and then another shallow cut to make sure that I didn't make it too small to fit the pipe. I've got that down to where it's going to fit, I think. Hopefully it's not too small. And it's about 3/4 of an inch wide, so I'll just need to cut that same amount off of this pipe to be able to fit it on. Lastly, I'm going to use the detail tool that I have just to add some unnecessary detail, really just to try it out. This was actually a lot of fun to do, and just a little bit of work here actually made it look a lot nicer. I could see myself going overboard very quickly, so I just tried not to. Then I took some 220 sandpaper and turned the speed down on the lathe so it was moving pretty slowly, and then just moved the paper back and forth to sand off the surface. You could definitely keep going up in higher grit paper to get a smoother finish, but 220 seemed pretty good to me. With the speed still pretty slow, I used a saw to cut off the end of the handle. And then the moment of truth to see if the pipe fit. It actually did fit a lot better than I thought it was going to, so I used my metal cutoff saw to cut down the piece. I filed off the edges just to make it smooth, and then fit it on. I did make this a little bit too small. I mean, you can barely push it over, and once it gets on there, it slides pretty easily. But I'm gonna add some CA glue here to hold it in place, and that should help the wood expand a little bit just to grab this. Really, this is here so the wood doesn't split when you push the tool in. So that's my hope that it'll still work, even though it's a little bit loose. After that glue dried, I used a belt sander to round over the outer edge of that pipe and the transition between the pipe and the wood. I put it back on the lathe and used some more sandpaper, which actually got rid of some of the detail, so I had to re-add the detail as well. While it was still on the lathe and spinning at a slow speed, I just wiped on a couple of coats of finish. Then I drilled a hole to actually put the tool into this handle. And yes, I know this is not the best way to do it. I'll talk about that in a minute. I added a little bit of glue down into this hole, which probably isn't necessary at all, and then very gently hammered in the file. Here it is, and it actually turned out a little bit better than I expected. It's not perfect, for sure, but overall it's pretty good. One big thing I noticed is that the file, as it went in, did not go in perfectly parallel to this, and that's because I was holding the handle when I drilled down into it. The better way to do that would actually be to chuck the handle into the lathe, put a drill bit in the other part of the lathe, and drive it in as it's turning. That'll get it perfectly parallel, and that's the way to do it if you have what you need on the lathe. I'm still waiting on my chuck, so I couldn't do that this time, but I learned for next time. I definitely also see that I should have spent a little bit more time shaping this and getting it even. In the end, it makes no real difference, but I would like to spend a little bit more time trying to get this like an even curve. It has a little bit of a bump in it, but I think with even just a little bit more practice, the shaping will get a lot easier. Overall, I'm really happy with this as a first lathe project. If you're just getting started with a lathe, I think this is a fantastic project to do. Even with me moving the camera around and filming all the different segments, this entire thing took me less than an hour. So if you're not running a camera, this should take you no time at all. Also, the design of this is totally up to you. As long as it's comfortable to use, you're good to go. Like I said before, this is really just me getting started, so I don't have tons of experience to share with you, but there are several people on YouTube that are really good at turning on the lathe. I'll link some of them down in the description, but Carl Jacobson will teach you a whole lot. Peter Brown does a lot. Frank Howarth. There's quite a few, and I'll have them listed down below. If you know of another turning channel that you think would be helpful for people wanting to get started, leave it in the comments. Also in the comments, leave me some ideas for things that I can make in the future on the lathe. And yes, a lightsaber handle is already on the list. I've got lots of other project videos that you might like, so be sure to check those out, and don't forget to subscribe. That's it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.